I've been lurking on this sub for a while and was realizing that I had a couple of stories that would fit pretty well on here. This is my first time posting. I'm sorry for any awkward or annoying formatting, I'm doing this on my phone. This event happened 20 years ago, when I was 9 years old, so some of it may not make a ton of sense. I'm just telling what I remember and what thoughts I remember having at the time. When I was 9, my family took a trip to a ski resort in West Virginia. My dad really wanted to get his money's worth, so he had my whole family out on the slopes about 20 minutes before the lifts were even running. It was something like 15 degrees and around lunchtime, my mum and I were getting too cold to have fun. We decided to go get hot chocolates at the food hall while my dad and brother stayed out for a few more advanced runs, and all agreed to meet for lunch after about an hour. My mum and I got our hot chocolate and were warming up in the food hall when I got a second wind. The kiddie slope was right outside the building, so I asked my mum if I could do a few runs while waiting for my dad and brother to come back. My mum was usually extremely cautious about letting my brother and I do things on our own, but from where she was sitting she had a view of the slope through the window and probably for that reason, said okay. At first everything was fine. I was thrilled to be out on my own and felt invincible blasting down an easy slope after all the trickier ones I'd been on with my parents. I went down a couple times and was feeling good when I started to notice myself passing a specific man over and over. This man was very distinctive looking in the crowd of skiing families wearing 90s-style snow gear. He was tall, wearing what looked like a black trench coat, had a long, dark beard, dark-rimmed glasses, and a black hat with a rim like a short top hat. I don't know the name of this exact style, but it was like a less formal top hat, kind of. As a 9-year-old kid, his appearance scared me a little and reminded me of a cartoon depiction of a bad guy or a robber. I started feeling like I was seeing him everywhere. It wasn't a huge slope, but it still seemed like we passed each other more often than I was passing other skiers. I also started getting the sense that he was trying to get on the lift with me, like waiting to get in line until after I did, even though we never ended up being put on a lift together. I couldn't tell if I was being paranoid or if he really was showing up way too often, so I decided to test him. The next time I got off the lift, I went back down the slope like normal, knowing he had been a few chairs behind me and would probably come right down the slope as well. When I was about halfway down the hill, I stopped suddenly and the man passed me. That's when it started getting weird. After passing me, the man went a little way further down the hill and gently fell down in a controlled way. He sat on the ground and watched me pass him, then immediately got back up and skied the rest of the way down the hill, getting in line for the lift, several people behind me. I don't know what he said, but he spoke to each of the people that were in line between him and me and managed to get right behind me as I was about to get on the lift. Right as the chair came around, he got up beside me and tried to get on the lift with me. At the last second I played dumb and said, "Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead," and stepped back to let him on. He seemed surprised by what I said, but got on alone and I got on the next lift with a mum and her daughter instead. They were really nice and I had a good talk with them on the way up the hill. For some reason I was too stupid and shaken up to tell them about the man. I was hoping it'd look like they were my family or at least like someone else on the slope was paying attention to me. At this point I felt pretty sure that this creepy man had singled me out and years of my parents' stranger danger training told me that it was probably time to find my mum. I resolved to ski back to the food hall as soon as I got to the top of the slope. Instead, I got off the lift, said goodbye to the mum and daughter, and was immediately approached by the man, who clearly waited for me at the top. He came right over to me and said, "Are you all alone, little girl?" It's funny to think back now, but at the time, I remember being kind of insulted at this question because it sounded so much like all the cheesy lines my parents would come up with when they taught my brother and I about stranger danger. I couldn't believe this guy couldn't think of a less obvious question to ask, or that he actually referred to me as "little girl" instead of pretending to know me or something less conspicuous. I think his audacity in that regard kept me from being as afraid as I otherwise might have been. It made it seem like a game or simulation, which probably helped me act more natural. I answered him very matter-of-factly, saying that I wasn't alone, and pointed to a nearby man and his teenage son, saying that was my dad and brother. Then I walked away very casually as if I wasn't at all weirded out by his question and skied down the hill to the food hall where I quickly found my mum. I told her all about the guy and the weirdness, and while I was still telling her, I saw him come inside and start walking around with his head high, clearly scanning the crowd like he was looking for someone. My mum was really freaked out and didn't let me leave again, even to get food. My dad and brother arrived soon after that, and my mum told my dad my story. He brushed it off as someone probably being awkward but trying to look out for me, but my mum wasn't convinced, and I'm not either. I think about that guy every now and then and wonder what was really going on with him. Why was he dressed so unusually and unseasonably while skiing? Why was he only skiing on the kiddie slope when he didn't seem to be with a family? Why did he notice me at all? Anyway, to the snidely whiplash-looking guy on the snowshoe ski slope, let's not meet again.